Hi guys. I'm just gonna start talking right away, even though no one's in here yet, because I know from watching other people's live videos that it kind of lingers in the beginning, and I don't want that dead space. So hello, I think my second time going live, and the first time was super impromptu. So hopefully this one will go a little bit more smoothly. I just wanted to talk a little bit about, for those of you who don't know, my first fabric collection is about to come out. It's been a long and super exciting process, and I just wanted to be able to share that. I can finally share the fabrics, and I don't have to hide anything anymore. And so I've collected some questions that people have sent in asking about the process and what it's like. And so, hi guys, thanks for waving. That makes me feel nice. Ooh, okay, deep breath. I don't feel uncomfortable in front of cameras usually, and I feel pretty comfortable talking to you guys, as you know, but it's still hitting that live button. Suddenly the, heartbeat starts going and everything. So, oh, there's so many waves now. Can I wave back? Oh, I'll wave with my hand, my actual hand. So I'm going to start with the questions. I tried to organize them in groups that seem to go together, but it's not going to be perfect. And then after that, I'll go through sort of the process beginning to end, and we'll fill in any gaps that the questions did not cover. So starting off, who am I? So I wrote an Evernote note to have the questions, and I wrote a few notes for answers just so that I don't forget things. And my answer for who are you is college dropout who got fired from my graphic design job last year. Wow, I'm going to pad that a little bit. There's a little bit more to the story than that. I did get fired from my graphic design job last year. It was a short-lived job that I truly was not a great fit for. But before that, I had worked as a graphic designer for a few years at a tech company doing their user interface designs, and was very in the digital world, like completely. I wasn't making any artwork. And like 2 years ago now, maybe three, I did my first 100-day challenge. It was just by myself. I set up a 100-day challenge to draw every day for 20 minutes. And that introduced a bunch of creativity back in my life. And even though I had been creative in the graphic design world, I hadn't been creating anything original. And so that all started happening, and I started taking Bonnie Christine's pattern classes right as I started to learn how to sew, and all of that started to come together. And that's how the dream of having my own fabric line sort of started. So let's talk about the line. I'm going to show you guys all the prints. There are 6 patterns, and they each come in 3 colorways. And I will show you. So the colorways, I broke them down. Windham, and we'll talk about this more, but Windham did not come to me and say, you need to have this many patterns. They need to be 2 focal points, 3 blenders. They didn't do any of that. I'm the one that was just trying to think of, okay, when I'm buying fabric, what am I looking for and what would be helpful? And also from a design point, how can I break this down to make it so that everything is balanced and everything? And so 3 colorways made sense to me. That way I could have a light, which is kind of softer, a bright one, which has all my crazy Dylan colors in there, and then a dark one, because I personally think that fabric tends to go in this very light and bright area, and I wanted to have some dark prints too. I make a lot of bags, and it sucks to have a bunch of prints that are like white based to use for an exterior of a bag. It's just going to get dirty quickly. So without further ado, I'm going to go through the bright ones first, and the focal point of the collection is called Wild. I just have these little samples here. I don't know if I'm going to be great at showing them and how the color turns out, but it is a large half drop repeat. It's a floral, it's yellow, and I'll talk more about this, but this guy actually was not part of the original collection. This one was added in after I went to Quote Market. The second one is Tomato Tomato. It's these pink and red little vintage tomatoes. The third is Bounty, and it's hard to see in this colorway, but this is a mix of little veggies and flowers and fruit. And this is yellow and white. And again, well, I'll just wait. I have so much I want to say, and it's all, my teacher brain wants to organize it and have it come out in like a hierarchy and have it make sense, but it's just not, I've just got to let it go. This one might not show up on camera. This is Garden Plot, and it's a blender print that is literally like a blueprint of a garden. And so that one you'll be able to see it better in other colorways. This is Sun Followers, It's a little stripe that's got little sunflowers in it, and the bright one is this bright green and yellow. It's pretty groovy. And then the last blender is called Smock, and it's this nice kind of plaid, and it's that bright yellow. So those are the 6 prints. That's the bright one. I'll show you the soft one next. Now I have to tell you, this one, and I already showed you a picture, so it's not that exciting, but this is my favorite print in the whole line. I thought that Yellow Wild would be my favorite because it's flowers and it's yellow and it's really bright and bold, but the Soft Wild is what really kind of took me. The pink, when you see it in person, if you see it in person, is so perfect next to the green. It's like this bright, corally, perfect like balance of chalky pink and corally pink, and against that yellow green, oh, it's so cute. And I don't feel like an a-hole like bragging about my own. Yes, Britta, I will bring up what a blender print means. Brittany, thank you. I don't feel like an a-hole saying that I love this because I've worked so hard on this collection. If I didn't love it, then what would be the point of doing it? But I think like out of 18 prints, I'm allowed to go nuts over this one. It just, I think it just really captured the whole collection really well. The light tomato print is this light, it doesn't show all the green in real light, you know, on the screen, but it's like a really pretty green blue, pretty vintage looking. Here is Bounty. It also comes in a blue background with kind of the cream foreground, and again, those are those little veggies prints. I think, not to call out favorites, but the little pickle cucumber, I mean, come on, that's just cute. That's just good taste. I'll compliment myself. That's great taste. This is my favorite of the garden plot ones. I just love white and blue. It's got a very classic look to me, and it's got that blueprint look. A little I'm just gonna say it. Okay, so something so fitting happened while making this. So there's a lot of, all the little plants and everything have little names that I wrote out, like the tomatoes say tomatoes and everything. And I spell checked the ones that I knew I'd have a hard time with, like zucchini and stuff. Did not look up lavender, spelled lavender wrong on here. You can't always tell in my handwriting. And it's like, I caught it really late, and honestly, I had a chance that I could have fixed it. I think I probably could have told Windham and they would have fixed it, but I think that imperfection really kind of meant a lot to me to show that like, I put so much into this and I'm still human. I spelled lavender wrong. Erin said, I love that you're sharing this. She knows because I like confessed to her on a phone call, and I was like, Erin, you have to hear this story and we can't tell anybody, but I just told everybody because that's what I do. Sun Followers in the light print is super light. It's really low volume. It's kind of pretty. I made in a lookbook, which I'll also talk about, there's a pillowcase made out of it, and I think it's really pretty. And then the blender, the Smock blender here is blue and white. I should have grabbed water. I'm gonna cough. And here we are at the dark colorway. So Wild also comes with a dark gray background, green, and cream. Tomato comes with this navy background. And I will say, just because I don't want anyone to be disappointed, it reads a tiny bit more contrasty on camera than it does. It's got almost like a faded denim look is what the navy looks like, and so I just wanted to point that out. Bounty also comes in this bright orange. This is my boyfriend's favorite. He just loves that bright orange, which is pretty cool. Garden Plot, this is probably, you'll be able to see this one better. This is the moss color. So again, this is the one that I spelled lavender wrong on. Hey, Taylor. And then Sunflowers, which I've shown a lot of this. This is one of my favorites, the black and white kind of 90s. Even though it's like the whole collection has kind of a groovy 70s feel, this one, I grew up in the 90s, and so there had to be like a little bit of a 90s touch there. And then the last Smock blender is that dark. Again, it's kind of like the faded navy color. So that is the whole collection, 6 patterns in 3 colorways each. And even though the colorways are kind of set in their little families, I think they do mix and match really nicely, which is pretty cool. I'm sorry, I have to cough and I can't keep you from it, so sorry about that. So that is Mazy. It tells this story. It's a very personal story of just growing up with my mom in the country with my sisters. When I was really little, my mom was one of those like super moms that she made our Halloween costume, she had her own garden, she made our gourmet dinners, like she just made it look like it was nothing to be Martha Stewart as a mother. And living on a farm, it was just, the summers were this magical time where I could eat snap beans off of the, out in the fields, or we could go pick corn. And so I wanted those feelings of this artistic mom and like this wonderful world that she made for us when we were a kid. I wanted to put that into the collection, and so that's what it is. How did you get started in textiles? And when you started on the path of illustration / pattern design, was having a fabric collection one of your goals? So everything sort of came together all at one time. I was working as a graphic designer, and there was a little bit of overlap before I got fired from my job. When I was learning illustration in the background and taking pattern classes and on Skillshare trying to learn all of that. And I'm not gonna cry. I don't know why. I haven't coughed all day, and suddenly when I'm on here I feel like I have to cough. And I also, at that same time, my boyfriend and we owned a videography company, and he actually booked a local quilt shop for us to do a promo video for them. And so this is, again, I'm working as a graphic designer, I'm learning illustration on my own, and we walk into this quilt shop, and I had just forgotten that sewing was a thing that people did, like just fully forgot about it. And so it just kind of blew my mind. I saw the sewing machines. I remembered my mom doing it when I was younger, and it was just this very nostalgic and happy feeling. And that quilt shop, they're still great friends today. They sold me my first machine, and it was really exciting. And so that all was coming together, and Bonnie was doing her fabric lines, and so it was just like, oh, I've got to do this. I felt so much joy when I was buying fabrics and putting my hands on them and stashing them, and so that's kind of how the dream came to be. I would say that's how I got started. So some questions about making collections. Really quickly, some questions came through on there. What is a blender print? So each collection is made up of a few different things. Not everything, if you think of it like food. If everything on your table were like a main entree, like you've got a steak and burgers and pizza, and what do vegetarians eat for main entrees? Trying to be inclusive. I don't know. Tofu. You got all these main entrees. It's like, that's too much, that's too heavy. You need side dishes, you need something lighter, you need things in between. And a fabric collection is very much the same. So a blender print is a print that isn't, anybody could make this. This isn't, I'm not a genius for coming up with this. This is, but I felt this was a really super necessary element to have in the collection. I thought that next to one of these florals, what could really start connecting some of these prints, that's what a blender is. It sort of fills those gaps. When people are quilting, not everything can be as big. You need interest. You need difference in the sizing and the scale and the density and all of that. And so blender prints are usually low volume, meaning there's lower contrast usually, but not always, or the scale is smaller. There's something that kind of makes it recede to the background while the focal point prints kind of come to the foreground in some way. And then somebody asked if I made these in Illustrator. That's a great question. So I know before I went to Quilt Market, I was a little worried. I kept hearing that Illustrator was the industry standard and that's what everybody uses and you have to use it. And so I made the very first fabric collection I made, which was this one. I did make a lot in Illustrator because I thought that's kind of what I had to do. But no, you don't have to. And the other collections I made for Quilt Market some were done in Photoshop, some were done in Illustrator. In fact, I'll take this moment to show you some of the artwork. Okay. Some of the artwork for Mazy. So these are the original sketches for the Wild print, and you can see that this is a traditional half drop repeat. 2 sheets of paper, they repeat on all sides, it was hand done, and then this is as far as it got on paper, and then I took it all into Photoshop and finished it there. So some things were done that way. In other collections, like if any of you guys remember my circus collection that I posted a few months ago, a lot of those were done with drawings like this, where they were already colored and things weren't separated and everything. And so in that case, I had to work completely differently, and that was in Photoshop. The main print for Bounty, hope this shows up on camera. You can see that the pencil lines are super, super light, guiding where the shapes are. and then I had my black lines on top, and that's because I was planning on, I knew bringing this into Illustrator I would be recreating those shapes, and so I didn't want the pencil lines to get in the way. I just needed them to guide my eye as I trace that shape, and then I could use the black lines and trace those and put those on top. So to answer that question, some were made in Photoshop, some were made in Illustrator, and Windham did not bat an eye. Like, at no point did they say we need this file type or anything. They just kind of said, you know, give it to us. And there was even a point in the process of going back and forth when they would send notes. When they said notes, we would send feedback back and forth based on the samples. And there was, I noticed in the sunflower print, there was a really weird gap in one of the stripes that was in there. And I had already indexed the Photoshop file, and if you don't know what that means, it's really just, think of it as I sort of finalized the file. It's a little bit hard to edit it once it's been indexed. And I told Windham, I was like, hey, is there any way with that file you can fix that weird gap? And like, I just tried to explain to him where it was, and like, I didn't supply anything else, and they just magically took care of it perfectly. So that being said, these manufacturers, I mean, they have very, very intelligent designers working there, and people who know the technology, and they know the business. That's why they're manufacturers, because they know what they're doing. And so I don't think it would make sense for them to limit, like, you can only work in Illustrator, you must provide us these files. You know, they will take it anyway. And actually, something that really surprised me with Windham is they said, this was after they sent the contract and we were kind of going over it, they said, you know, if you have artwork that you want to put into repeat, we can do that. If you need help, you know, figuring out colors, we can do that. And to me, I was like, isn't like being able to turn something into a repeat like a basic skill? Like, I figured that would be like the base level that you expect from me. But they said no, that they have some people that paint physical artwork and then mail it to them, and then they turn it into repeats and they help work with it into the fabric collection. And so that's really exciting. I am too much of a control freak, and I have too big of a vision that I'm stuck to think that I would be comfortable just handing it over and saying, you do it. But for those people who, if art is your number one, like you're just an excellent artist and you don't have those other skills, you can still make it happen, is all I'm saying. So, you know, there's kind of a give and take, and the companies, I think, will fill in and help. And again, I've only worked for I've only worked with Windham, so I can only say that, but they've seriously been so awesome the whole time. And okay, let me get back to the questions, because I already think I'm jumping around too much. Could you please talk about the business side of selling your fabric to a manufacturer and how you or the manufacturer goes about putting together a contract that both parties agree with? So I chose the route of going to Quilt Market, and that was literally because Bonnie Christine was like, I went to Quilt Market and I did these things, and I just followed in her footsteps. There was no creativity on my part. That seemed like a way that made a lot of sense to me, and the type of fabric that I wanted to get into was kind of the quilting world, so that made a lot of sense. So I'll talk, there's a question later about like getting to Quilt Market and setting up appointments with those companies, so I'll hold that. But yeah, so I met with manufacturers at Quilt Market and sat down with their art directors and their art teams to show off my portfolio and see if they wanted to sign me. This is a great question. How do you or the manufacturer go about putting together a contract that both parties agree with? So far in my illustration career, bigger companies that are kind of used to doing this, they are the ones that kind of lead the ship. Like maybe some designers come to them and say, here is my contract for licensing with you. But they're the ones that know this industry. They're the ones that are doing regular contracts. So I just let Windham send me their contract. And I think that's pretty common, that, you know, the bigger company is going to be the one to kind of, I don't know, help out there. So they sent me the contract. I read over it. It was very light. It was not 17 pages and they're not trying to trick me. It's a very straightforward thing. We're just trying to protect each other, that it's clearly stated. And I think the contract is just basically one collection for 2 years, and then we can renew it, you know, within that 2 years if we want to. It just talks about that they want exclusivity within their little kind of realm of the fabric industry, which was really important to me. They don't, so they ask for exclusivity with fabric by the yard. So if consumers can buy that fabric to do things with, then that is the world that they want exclusivity in. But if, let's say, Target reached out and said, hey, we want to do a bedding collection with you, I could license those same designs to them, because the end product to the consumer is not fabric. It's a comforter that they do something with. And so I really liked that because I didn't feel boxed in, but I can still be loyal to Windham in the way that they want. And so that made a lot of sense. There wasn't anything in the contract that made me bat an eye or made me, there were a few things I had to clarify just because I am not a lawyer and I don't know what some of the words mean, but it was all easy. I didn't get a creative lawyer for it because I didn't feel I needed to. So it was all good. Did you plan each design, like I need 2 main prints, 1 ditzy, and then make them? Or did you sketch within a theme and see what came out? Or how did the planning go to get balance? And then another question that was very similar was, what goes into your designs as far as scale, spacing, pattern, colors? Like, are there parameters you had to keep in mind? The best course that I've seen that captures to me what a great fabric collection is Lizzie House's section on Creative Bug in the How to Design for Fabric. It's got Lizzie House, Heather Ross, and Denise Schmidt. And they all kind of talk about their different approaches to how they see the life of their fabric collection and how they start and how they work with that. And Lizzie House has a section where she breaks down kind of how I did, like, here are the 3 colorways, and then here is the focal point, and here's the 3 medium prints, and here's the 3 small prints. And basically what you're trying to do here is you're trying to do the work for the quilter. And I just love how she said it, because to me, and this is a personal preference, there are fabric collections out there that are very, very matchy-matchy. When you look at them, you can tell they were created at the same time, they go together, everything coordinates. If there's a teal dot in this one, that same teal is used here with that, you know, it's very, very matchy-matchy. And that has a, I don't know, it's got a place in the quilting industry for sure, but for me, I personally like when things look like they kind of surprise you that they go together. Like, it's kind of like a delight, like, oh, I didn't think, oh no. Sorry about that. I like when things look like, oh, I didn't expect those to go together, and they do. And so Lizzie House kind of talks about this idea of the designer doing the work for the quilter to make sure that things are curated and look well. So for instance, with my collection, I think it's a little surprising. You might not think that this print can live in the same collection as this print because they're so far apart from each other, and yet there's enough little details in between that string it along. And I, as a designer, have gone through to make sure that I can I piece a quilt together with this? Can I envision blocks and projects with this? And so that means that the consumer kind of trusts me. When they see this pile here, they don't have to see 4 colors used in every single print to know it goes together. It sort of is something bigger than that. And so I will link to that. Any resources that I mentioned throughout this, I'll link after. But that course was really excellent because it opened my eyes to, oh good, I don't have to make everything match. I want to tell a story. And this is my favorite thing to talk about with this. I did a whole workshop in New York about telling your story, and it's definitely an idea that I want to keep teaching and bringing to people because it's kind of this romantic idea, but there is a way that you can make it real and like bring it into what you're doing. So for instance, let's say that a visitor, like a French woman, came and visited you from France and she was staying with you. What are the little details of this woman staying there that like tell you who she is, you know? I bet just in her suitcase alone there are, you know, what is she wearing? What textiles does she have on her? What colors is she drawn to? What foods was she eating? And I think like that is the story that you are telling in your fabric collection. You're picking out, think of it as a trip you're going on, and you're taking pictures of all your favorite details. Some of them are you're far away and it's a big cityscape, and some of them are really close-ups of a texture of a tile that you found. And your fabric collection is a stringing together of all of your favorite details that capture that story. And the nice thing is your story, like someone doesn't have to look at the collection and know, wow, this is about Dylan's mom and growing up with her 2 sisters. And it's like, it's not like that. It's just one of those invisible things that humans connect to when they look at what you're seeing. You know, they can just tell that something is holding all of that together. They trust you that it's being held together. So they don't question like, that yellow in this print is different from that yellow, and you know, why did that happen? And it doesn't matter, it's part of the story. And so I will say Mazy, since this was my first collection that I made, and this artwork I did last April, I'll talk about that too. And it is kind of, I think you can tell that it was made kind of in the same way. It looks like they fit together, but some of my other collections don't. It's like there are some textures that seem so random and you might think, how did she even think to put that in there? And yet it kind of works, and that's because there was some detail that, you know, you're pulling from. And so when I start a collection, and Bonnie Christine has a great class on that. She's got great class. Everybody on Skillshare, great classes, lots of stuff to check out on there. You know, she talks about like getting it all out, brainstorming, like writing the name of the collection down, getting those keywords out that make you think of it. In my Mazy artwork, I have brainstorming pages where I wrote words like soil, wild, blooms, stalks, buds, free, rich, full, fresh, vintage, down to earth, fragrant, tall, sweet. So these are all things that, while those words might not directly translate to a fabric print, they put me in a place that I can then draw from. Okay, well, what are the people wearing there? What does the wallpaper look like? What does the dish towel that's hanging on this person's counter, what does that look like? And I kind of work backwards in that way to figure out, okay, well, what should these prints look like? So it starts there, and then I start sketching, and for me, I think that it makes sense to have one or two focal points. So Wild is the focal point print. It's the largest one in scale. The items within there are larger than the other items, but I still didn't want it to get too crazy. So there's still only two colors, the gray and the green, and then the neutral cream that's in there. So it's the focal point, but that doesn't mean it has to be super wild. And then you can see as we go down each print, they start to get less heavy in scale or density. This print is much more dense, so the scale was brought down to kind of help balance that out. And so it's sort of like a fun balancing act. One thing that I did was for my portfolio that I took to Quilt Market, I had some quilt blocks just digital quilt blocks in Illustrator. I was like, what quilt block would I make with this? And then I put the fabrics in there to see if they would work. And that was really helpful because I could see, oh, this fabric that I want to be 200 scale is just too big. If a quilter tries to cut out a little 2x2 square, they're gonna see nothing. And so, you know, just trying to keep things in mind and shifting them around. I do want to tell you, so this collection in particular was made for one of Bonnie Christine's Skillshare challenges last April. There was like a 1-month challenge to do your first collection, and at that time I hadn't really worked in a collection yet. I didn't know what that would be like, and so I was like, I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna sit down and I'm gonna nail this collection out. And so it's great that that's what Windham chose. Like, it has, you know, it means a lot to me. It was kind of that first collection and everything, but I also was like in this very, like, I've got to get it done this weekend. I just want to see what it looks like. Like, I just was so focused on it. And I posted a picture on my Instagram. Maybe I'll share it later. You can scroll down and find it, but I did a mock-up of what the collection looked like when it was done. And this print, Bounty, was originally the focal point. This was big, it was multicolored, it wasn't just a two-tone print, and Wild didn't exist yet. And Windham, one of the notes that they came to me after we signed, they said, hey, we were wondering if you could either add more flowers into the Bounty print or introduce a second floral print. And I'm like, twist my arm, yes, I'll make you 500 floral prints if you want. But it did pose a problem. I couldn't just make like any flower print and throw it in there because the whole collection sort of circled around the Muse, which at the time was this print. This one had been the biggest, it was multicolored, and all of the prints that came after that sort of fell after it. So the challenge then became, how do I introduce a new print at the head of the family that doesn't disrupt all of this, you know, that works as the head of the family? So anyway, Wild was made, and then this print was scaled down and recolored to just be two tones, because at the end of the day, I wanted a larger flower print as the focal point than a bunch of vegetables. So that is how that happened. So I did not plan, I mean, I tried to have a rough idea of, okay, I want one focal point, 2 medium prints, 3 blenders, and I just tried to watch the hierarchy. I just watched the scale. Well, where? Here. When I'm making artwork, I really don't know, like a lot of the time the artwork is a lot bigger than I need for the pattern, and so you can see these had started off when I was making this Polska, this little windmill pattern. I didn't know whether they were going to be small or big, and so I just made sure to paint in a way that didn't box me in, so that if it ended up that, oh, this windmill pattern that I thought was going to be a tiny blender is actually going to be a huge print. It's going to be a focal point. So I think I had it in mind, but I was by no means that I have a very strict, like, one focal point, two blenders, one stripe. I do like a stripe or a plaid. I think there's a stripe and plaid in like every single one of the collections I've made, so that's definitely something I like. As far as parameters, my fabric was printed digitally. That's what, for those of you who print with spoon flour, that's what spoon flour does. And digital printing just means it essentially goes through like a large inkjet printer, and all of the inks are printed in one pass, and it's set. Traditionally, fabrics are screen printed, and so huge metal dies are made or screens are made that print one color at a time, which is why fabric manufacturing is hard for individuals to do, because if these companies are going to have these huge, like, big things, screens made for your fabric, you need to be able to order at least 1,000 bolts of fabric to make it financially viable, and I'm not going to buy 1,000 bolts of fabric and hope that it works out. So that's where the fabric companies come in. They can kind of be that middleman. They're used to dealing with the mills. They know how to do all that. They can take on that cost, and to me, they can return and just give me a royalty off the top of sales. But that's not where I was going with that. We were talking about... Oh yeah, so my stuff was digitally printed. So I was a little nervous when they first told me, because spoon flour always photographs really beautifully, but whenever I got their fabrics, I've never been I could always tell it was a spoon flour fabric. I could never see it in my stash and just have it fully blend in, and I was a little nervous. I was like, okay, we'll get it digitally printed, that'll be fine. But then I saw samples of Kelly Ventura's Botany line, I believe is digitally printed, and it was the most gorgeous fabric. So digital printing has caught up a lot, and that also gave me more flexibility as the designer, because screens are a certain size. They have a set height and width, and so your designs have to fit into a multiple of that, and so you kind of have to worry about that. With digital printing, I did not. I pretty much just sent over the files and was like, 70% scale at this one, 50% scale at this one, make it happen. And it didn't matter what size my tiles were or anything. They were able to just reproduce that. Also, it means that if they ever wanted to reprint the collection, it would be a lot easier with digital printing than it is with screen printing. So the question was, were there any parameters I kept in mind? I would just make sure that you know from the company how they're printing it, and ask up front if things need to fit into a certain size or anything like that. Yeah, okay. What files did Windham ask for? I said earlier they didn't ask for anything. They just send it on over. They gave me their FedEx number to send them anything physical I had, and then they gave me the email address to send anything digital I had. So I sent a very well organized set of files that everything was clearly named, and if it was an Illustrator file, I sent an Illustrator file. If it was a Photoshop file, I sent a Photoshop file. And like I said, I just kind of passed it over very quietly, like, here it is, and just hoped that if they had a problem with it, they would let me know, and they just didn't have any problems with it, because they are amazing and they know what they're doing. Finding a company. How did you get your foot in the door with fabric companies, and did you contact them first? So I went to Quilt Market, where, if you don't know, I have a video that talks more about specifically Quilt Market on YouTube, which I can link to. But Quilt Market is like this gathering of everybody in the quilting fabric world, where the companies can show off what lines they have coming up, quilt stores can show up and purchase. You get to see what everybody's doing, the latest and greatest machines and technology and quilts. There's a beautiful jaw-dropping quilt showcase, and these companies are there. So Windham and Michael Miller and Moda and everybody, they all have booths, and a lot of the time the art directors go. And so even though Quilt Market is not set up for people like me, designers, I can still benefit from it by all of those people being in one place. And so it's a closed industry show, and so I had to show that I was a professional, and I just had to show that I had a URL and I think maybe my tax ID number for my company. It wasn't that big of a deal though. You just have to show your credentials so that people can trust that you can get in there and everything. So anyway, I went last fall, and the time between me deciding to go to Quilt Market and actually going was very short. It was like 4 months, and in that time I also developed all the collections. Now, Mazy was mostly done, but remember, it needed a lot of tweaking. It needed to be revisited, and so I essentially made 2 whole collections and then like reimagined this third one in 4 months. And that also meant that I was reaching out to these companies for appointments before the work was done. Like, it was just, if you guys knew my whole timeline, I'm just always so backwards and all over the place. It's kind of nuts. So I was calling these companies. I had a little script that I wrote out on my computer that said, "Hi, my name is Dylan. I'm a designer. I'm going to Quilt Market for the first time. I would really love a chance to sit down with your creative team to see if we would be a good fit for licensing my designs." And what would happen is I would call it was so nerve-wracking to make these calls, and it's just not a big deal. Like, Bonnie Christine says it takes 10 seconds of courage, and that's truly it. Like, it just takes 10 seconds of courage to just do it. Having a script helps. So I would call, and somebody would answer, and I'd get my spiel out, and they'd say, "Okay, I'll connect you with someone." And then I usually got bounced around a few times before I found the correct voicemail box, and it was almost always a voicemail box where I would say my spiel again. I'd get it out, I'd let them know my contact information, and then I'd wait. At the time, I had about 1,500 Instagram followers that I was very proud of, but I knew that I wasn't a heavy hitter. I did not have a portfolio site. I was not sending them samples of what I was doing. Like, I was like, how are these people going to why would they give me an appointment? Like, I'm basically saying, I'm going to be there. I hope you trust me enough that I'm going to have stuff to show you, because right now I don't. I secured 4 appointments. My goal was to have 3. I wanted to have 3, knowing that I would sit down with at least 3 when I got there, and I ended up doing 4. And most of the time I would leave a voicemail for someone, and I would also leave my email address, and usually I got an email back before I would get a call back. In fact, I can't remember if I talked to anybody on the phone that was actually helpful at all. So I don't know, but email worked. And then I was upfront with telling them, like, so once I got in contact with the person, I said, "Here is what I'm doing. I am an illustrator. I have these collections that I'm going to show you." And I told them my stats. I told them that I was a Skillshare teacher. I just tried to give them a general idea of who I was. And I think the reason that they took me on was because I was professional. I approached them. I didn't say, "Hey, I'm a nobody and I've never done this and I'm really nervous. Do you want to meet with me?" Even though I felt that way, I was like, "Hi, I'm Dylan. This is what I want. Do you want to do this? Can we do this?" And so I think if you just ask for what you want and you try to be professional about it and brief, don't bog these people down. Like, they don't care at this point, like, don't waste their time. But just get it out there and everything is going to be okay. So I called, I set up the appointments that way, and it was easy. The companies are used to this now, people wanting to meet at Quilt Market, so it was fine. How did you know? Nope, I skipped one, sorry. How many pattern collections did you make before you contacted fabric companies? So I had 3. This is the book that I had made through Artifact Uprising. I didn't keep the cover on because the cover is, I don't know, I don't think it shows the quality of the book like everything else. And each collection kind of followed the same format. I'm gonna hide my head over the top of this. Oh my goodness, I don't know the best way to do this. Storybook time, maybe? Can you guys see that above everyone's text? So the book just kind of gave an intro to who I was, and then so each collection started with the page that had the name of the collection, a little bit of a description, and then the colors. And then the first page would have the spread of all of the patterns that are in the collection, and then each page after that would show each pattern in its offered colors. And then after all of the patterns were shown, I would show a quilt layout. Where is it? There it is. So here are 2 of the quilt layouts that I did for this one. And so the whole book was really set up not with a ton of text. It was set up so that I could walk through it at Quilt Market and talk about it. which is what I had to do. Some people had said ahead of time, like, that let them lead it. They're the professionals. They know. They did not lead it. I sat down and it was quiet until I was like, all right, well, let me take you through my book. So if you do go, be prepared to be able to talk about what you did. What story are you telling? Why did you make these choices? You know, like, give them a little background. So the first collection was that circus collection. The second one is called Polska, which is kind of based off of my Polish heritage and Polish folk art. And so this one only had 5 prints that were shown in 3 colorways each. And then the third one was the Mazy collection. The Mazy collection, let me show you what it originally was, and I'll show you the prints that got thrown out. So originally you can see this is the Bounty print, and it was super cute, multicolored, don't get me wrong, but when it came down to this and the wild print, I'm gonna pick the flowers. I'm gonna do it every time, and I'm not gonna apologize. The Sunflowers print, you can see that that started off with like black centers, but this is one of the things that, this is why these companies know what they're doing. When they printed this out, and I can't not see it now, it looks like burn holes, or it looks like, it just doesn't look very good from far away, so that changed as well. This print was called Miss Marigold, and it's no longer in there. I just felt it didn't do anything anymore, and then those guys are still the same. So you can see the collection changed quite a bit. I did have Bounty in a 2-tone colorway, and so I guess that idea was kind of there before we started switching wild around. And then the quote blocks I came up with that were just really simple, blown out with great solids and, you know, smart patterning and everything. So this is the book I took with me. Like I said, it's Artifact Uprising. They did an excellent job quality-wise. Full bleed, the colors turned out how I hoped they would. Nothing was off. So those were the 3 that I showed up with. I also, just while we're on the topic of showing the book, so I would sit down with the companies and I would go through the entire book. I would talk about the collections. And then when it was time to leave them, I had these paper books made. They're 8.5 by 11, and they're just a few pages, and I just had one spread for each collection. So here's the first collection, the second collection, and then I put the name down in the corner, and then the third one, and then the back had my contact information. So that was a really nice thing to leave with them at the end, so they could remember. I had control over the presentation. I had way too many of them made. I have like 60 left, and I'm not going to show off this artwork in these collections again, so I don't know what to do with them, but they were made and they were super helpful. And then I also had postcards made from moo.com, and these were more for the people that I was meeting while we were walking around. So all of the postcards have the same back. They have my bio and my contact information, but then each front of the card has totally different designs. So each person got like a little art print if they wanted to, you know. So that was kind of nice to hand out instead of a business card. Really quickly, while this stuff's over here too, I just wanted to show you I was talking about how artwork gets developed in all different kinds of ways. Like, these were some of my original sketches for the circus collection. This, you can see, is a motif I did for Polska that I painted and then later on decided it needed some details. And so it just goes to show that the artwork can be developed in whatever way makes sense. At the time of making Polska, I was just learning to paint, and so that whole collection is painted because that is what I was doing at the time. But when I was making Mazy, I was just learning about all of Illustrator and making patterns, and so I just kind of stuck with what I knew in there. And so, you know, it's okay. Like, I know it would be really nice if I could just say, here you go, here's your list of 10 things you need to do, and then you do those. But if it were that easy, then what would be the point? And the good news is it's better than that. There are no secrets. It's just tell your story, tell people what your strengths are, and go and do it. And you know, the people will work with you. It'll all work out. What's a better advantage, having sewing skills or color story skills? This is an excellent question. So I think that no matter what your lay of the land of skills is, you have strengths that you can bring to the table, and you need to focus and capitalize on those. And you can either ignore your weak spots or you can strengthen them. So here is what I feel my strengths were when I was reaching out to people for Quilt Market. I did not have a big Instagram following. I wasn't a heavy hitter influencer, and so that is something I knew, okay, I'm not bringing a huge audience to the table. I did feel like my creative vision and taste was very strong. So I knew that even if I was kind of a baby in this whole industry, I trusted my eye and I knew that I had taste and that I could figure this out. Also, my technical abilities. By that time, I had been a graphic designer for 5 or 6 years, and so I was very comfortable in Photoshop and Illustrator. And I knew that even if there was something that I didn't know right away that they needed me to do, that I'd be able to figure out and do it. And then I also was a sewist, and so I knew that I really know fabric because I know from my own time sewing what I like and what I don't like and what works and what doesn't work. And so when I went to them, I showed them my strengths. Hey, look, I can sew really well. Hey, look, I designed this whole book and I was very thoughtful about thinking about quilting and thinking about scale and density. I just focused on all that stuff. I didn't talk about how I didn't have any experience. I didn't talk about how I only had 1,600, and I only 1,600. It was a great 1,600. That's a lot of people. I just didn't focus on that. You know, I showed them what I could do. And so that is to say, if let's say you're a fabulous artist, like you are 10 times the artist I am, which is not hard. And that's not me putting myself down, that's being realistic. Like, I'm not the world's best artist, but I enjoy it and I'm good enough to do something with it. But let's say you really are, like art, it's what you do and you're really, really proficient with your art. And because of that, you maybe have less technical skills and you've never turned anything into a repeat before. You know, I think that you should then just focus on, hey, my art is so great that it doesn't matter that I have this other stuff. And so you sell your art. If you don't sew, then don't talk about how you have never sewn and that you have no interest in, you know, like just don't bring that up. It's all stuff that kind of balances each other out. I do think that you should ask why you want to make a fabric collection, because if it's just for the glory of having it or the paycheck or notoriety, like you're not going to be happy with it. Like, I wanted to make a fabric, like I haven't gotten a paycheck yet. There will be one coming at some point. And while I hope it's, you know, a few $1,000s, I have no idea how much it's going to be. I hope that there's like some good money there. But it, like, for me, the dream of the project has already happened. Like, the good things are already here. I just wanted the chance to do this. I wanted to work with this fabric company to see it happen. I wanted to touch the fabric. And so if you have those types of things that are drawing you to wanting to make fabric, then don't worry about what your skills are. Like, if you have that draw, then that's okay. That means that there's something in there that you are bringing to the table. Just try to be honest with yourself with, you know, what your skills are and what you don't have. And also, if you don't sew, you can also talk to people who do sew. You can, while you're making your collection, you can maybe befriend people on Instagram, or, you know, there are great quilters that are super friendly, and you can say, look, I was wondering if you would take a look at this and let me know if you notice anything or would change anything. And, you know, you can still find ways to fill in the gaps for what your skills don't have and everything, which is great. So is it more important to have sewing skills or color story skills? I don't know. I don't know what's most important to that company and to what you can do. But I think that you have strengths that you bring to the table and you can sell those. Working with the company, how much freedom did you have? Windham was excellent. In fact, there were times where I was waiting for them to kind of say, because I was so used to graphic design where I deliver a project, I say, here are the notes, here's what I noticed, and then I wait for the client to write back and say, okay, change this, we like this, but that's not working. And I just sort of figured the art direction with Windham would be the same. And they did have suggestions, like with the bounty print, they asked if we could add in more florals. One thing is we disagreed a little bit on the scale of the tomato print, but then we worked that out. And so there were things that they brought up, and as the fabric company, you got to know when to trust them. Like, they know what they're doing. They know this industry way better than I do. But if something came up that sort of blocked my vision for the whole collection, then I was sure to speak up. Like the tomato print, I think they wanted it a little bit smaller, and I said, you know what, it makes a big difference to me if it's even just, 10% bigger than that. And so they made it 10% bigger, and it wasn't an issue. that was really important for me. Whereas another thing, they thought one of the prints should be lighter, and I thought it was okay as it was, and they were like, I just think lighter would be better. So I was like, cool, do lighter. And so it's a give and take. It's okay. But I feel like they gave me a lot of freedom. And also about the lookbook, so a few of you wrote in and you were like, oh, I didn't know I had to sew, I didn't know I had to do all of this. And you don't. Windham was very clear at the beginning that I could be involved as much or as little as I wanted with the lookbook, and if I went to Quilt Market, and whether I just took the pictures or whatever it was, I could literally send them one photo, or I could do the whole thing. I had a creative vision, and this is my first collection, and it means so much. I have a lot wrapped up into it, with it being like my mom trying to have like her vision and everything. And so the person with the wedgie, that is my niece. Taylor, you're being a little brat right now. Please knock it off. I just lost my whole train of thought is gone because of wedgies. So we will let that one. Oh, so they gave me freedom, and I took on the lookbook, and they said that they would help find sewists. They said that they could photograph things for me, but I just happened to be the one. I really wanted to take it on. I wanted the challenge. I was like, I can learn photography for this. I can learn staging for this. And it worked out. I will share, the lookbook is live. I'll share it after this in my story, because I can't wait for you guys to see it. How did you know what to do or how to handle everything professionally while also having it be your first time? I was honest, and I also hid. It was like a blend of fake it till you make it and asking what I didn't know. I didn't go to Windham with all my insecurities at every level, like some of that I just had to deal and work through myself. But if at any point they asked something or brought something up that I didn't understand, I just asked a question about it, because why would I know? This is my first time doing it. And also, I just really appreciated when I signed the contract with them. I actually spoke with, I think he's the president of the company. He's a higher up. He's a big dude. And he was just so welcoming. He was like, here's how it works, and here's the process, and you'll start with art direction, and then we'll work with marketing. And, they pretty much acted like I had never done it before, and I really liked that. So I don't think a company, I can't speak for others, but I don't think they're going to expect you to know how they do things, because these fabric companies all do things differently anyway, so how could you know? So don't worry about it. If this is a dream of yours and you're scared about that whole process, it was fine. Just never be scared to ask questions, if you need to know it and you don't know it, then acting like you do know it when you don't isn't going to solve the problem. You may as well just ask the question, and then you've got the information. I was surprised to see how much sewing and design work you did for the lookbook. I feel like I'm even further from getting there now. Cool, we already talked about that. That was me. That was all me. And also, the 60 hours of sewing in a week, that's not common either. My fabric just happened to get delayed at the mill, and so we wanted it to launch as soon as possible. So as it was delayed and delayed and delayed, my window of when I could sew got smaller and smaller. And so it's just how it worked out. And again, I just want to reiterate, at no time was Windham like, you are a sweatshop and you will get all of this done. They gave me plenty of outs along the way to use digital mock-ups and to delay things, and so it's all good. It was easy and fine and good. What would you most like to see sewn with your new fabric line? So I love functional art. When I was growing up, my mom had she'd have really beautiful abstract paintings on the wall and everything, but I honestly don't remember those. The things that I remember most are the decals on her Pyrex bowls and the big florals we had on the shower curtains, the things that we actually used in our life. And so I'm really excited to see what functional stuff, sewing, usually when you're sewing something, is going to be functional in some way. I want to see the quilts that people come up with, because I'm not a naturally gifted quilter. I'm great at paring things down and making it really basic and working with solids, but I think true quilters, they are just magicians with making the prints do things, as a whole. And so I'm excited to see all of that. Will your fabric be carried in stores? If so, how do you go about getting your fabric into stores? It will be. So I don't have to worry about selling. That I probably could have told Windham, hey, I'll join your sales team too, but I don't want to do that. They take care of it. So that's one of the benefits of working for a company, is they are the middleman. So they're the ones that then go to the quilt shops. They have reps that go and sell all the collections that they have, and so I don't have to worry about that at all. It's different. I don't know what it's like if you get your own fabric like if you want to be the manufacturer and you're actually dealing with the mill directly. I'm not sure how that works, but I know that Deanne of Sweet Bee Designs, she was just like, oh, instead of just having my own fabric collection, I'm gonna have my own fabric company, and then she just started it. So I'm sure she's a wealth of information. I'm kind of volunteering her here that she'll give you information, but I think she will, because she might have better ideas about what is it like to source those fabrics. Somebody else asked if I know anyone that prints on muslin, so I really don't know about like self-manufacturing and sources for that, but I bet you can find people who can help you out with it. So those are all the questions that people sent in. I'm gonna do a quick, I feel like we covered a lot of it, but you know, I collected a lot of stuff and got it out, so I'm gonna show it to you, damn it, because I took the time to do it. So last April, we'll go back, I made that collection. I made the artwork for Bonnie's class. The artwork sat there for a while until July, when I decided I'm gonna go to Quilt Market in 3-4 months and I need to do this. So I sort of kind of got into a vacuum with making the collections, and I didn't make them one after another because I was doing it all at once. I was sort of working in whatever energy flow felt right. So in the beginning, the circus collection, I was just obsessed with it. I could picture it, I could feel it, I could hear everything happening there, and so the circus collection just kind of like took my whole brain over. But then later on in the process, when I hit walls with the circus collection, I would go to work on Mazy to, you know, update it, and then I'd come back, and then I'd work on Polska, and then I'd come back. And so there was definitely not rhyme or reason other than just following like my own rhythms. And it was 4 months, and guys, I procrastinated and wasted so much of that time, like so much of it, like Dylan quality procrastination happened. And so it can happen. Like, it was really intense, but it was nuts. So I'm not going to be able to do lives if I can't like read what people say and talk at the same time without losing my place. So made that artwork, and then I started making the artwork for Quilt Market. All in that time, I was reaching out to those companies. It was maybe like a month or two before Market that I started reaching out, but it wasn't until like the last month that I was really making those. I was getting my badge, I was applying for Quilt Market. The people at Quilt Market are very friendly. If you're confused about any of it, give them a call. I'm sure they will be so happy to help, you know, get you in the right place. As I prepared for Quilt Market, I counted down what my last possible shipment dates could be before, for like the portfolio book, like what's the last day that I can give them the file and expect to get this in time. And I basically worked up until those last deadlines. It was crazy. So like the last day that I could send it off to Artifact Uprising was the last day that I did it. Hang on, the sun's about to be coming through this window and it's gonna be nuts. So just listen to the soft jazz and hang on. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so did that. I started getting prepared, and then I will say, like, when I have a 2-minute cutoff. I guess oh my gosh, I've been talking for like a whole hour. Oh my gosh, that's so long. Okay, if you guys have any questions that come up of anything that I forgot or didn't expound upon, I can do a written Q&A. I don't know, maybe I'll go live again. I don't know. We'll see how it goes, if you guys like it or not. But yeah, so I went to Quilt Market, and I will say that like every part of this process, like I wanted this dream, but that did not mean that I did not kick my own ass along the entire process. I faced so much resistance. I mean, making the artwork and then having to call the companies. I mean, every little step felt huge to me. And then when I got to Quilt Market, I got there. I'm in Houston. I've got my playlist of all my Alicia Keys music that's going to pump me up as I walk through. And as soon as I walked through the doors, all I could think was, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I just wanted to go home. I wanted to go right home and not do it again. And I had to just do it. And so if you're facing resistance, don't take that as a sign that you shouldn't be doing it or you're going to fail. You'll fail if you don't do it because you couldn't get through your resistance. That's how it is. I have 50 seconds left. Thank you so much for watching this and sending in questions and letting me talk. It's been so exciting, and I really, if this is a dream of yours, I want let's do it. Let's make it happen, you know. I will be at Quilt Market this fall. Windham has asked me to have a booth with them. And so if you're going to market, I would love to meet you. We can hug and dance and hug and talk about fabric. And the countdown is very scary, so I'm just going to end it now. Thank you guys. I love you. You're the best. Bye.